Chapter 3. The Holstein Center was packed that night, so much so that you would have thought a B-list celebrity was doing a concert or appearance at the venue. The registration tables were buzzing about all the exciting dates and activities planned for the week. There was even plans for a Saturday night prom, where everyone could take the person they've most connected with to a party that mimics high school. Mariah and I had carpooled, and we were walking in to register when we saw Alison waiting for us. Most attendees wore business casual clothing, although one chunk of men were rocking the shirt and jeans combo. Alison was wearing a full ball gown dress with glittering sequins and a bow on her back. The dress was show-stopping red, and along with her deep purple purse and blonde wig, she looked like an elementary school teacher on acid who was dressing for a gala benefiting art supplies. "What on earth?" Mariah asked. "Thank you!" Alison smiled, as if Mariah had meant that as a compliment, as if "what on earth" meant "I've never seen that on earth and I love it, and you're so stunning and original." "What's the inspiration?" I inquired. "A paint swatch at Lowe's?" "I wanted to stand out," Alison argued. "How else am I going to meet people? By being basic?" Alison was standing out so much that a small aeronautical force was causing people to swerve around her. No one was coming close to what they assumed was an artistic performance. "All right, well, should we get this going?" Mariah said with her classic "I'm regretting this" sigh. We registered and separated into different parts of the arena floor. Alison, who looked like a rich person out of the Hunger Games, walked with Mariah to the heterosexual side of things. I made my way to a smaller corner, where I was greeted by an attendant. "Are you gay?" the attendant asked, giving me a look over as if there was a visual giveaway. As if all gay people had markings or a plumage of peacock feathers. If only it were that easy. Sadly, my joke fell flat with the attendant, who seemed taken aback. Looks like the attendant was not going to match with me. "Tonight's the speed round," the attendant educated me. "You have the clipboard and the pen, right?" "Yep." "You're number 142. That's a lot of gay men." I was surprised. For the American Midwest gay dating scene, I was expecting an even dozen. "That's a good thing?" The attendant's tone gave me the impression that he was over this conversation. "I wonder how many guys here know each other," I joked again. The attendant looked like he was considering unthrowing the rocks at Stonewall himself to stop my existence. "Probably not that many. You can take a seat," the attendant muttered. I took a seat next to number 75. "That's a better number than mine," I awkwardly pointed out. "I prefer yours," 75 said with a smile. "My real name is Jonah. I'm actually named 142. It's a family name." "Gorgeous. I can see why the name has been passed along through so many generations." I have to ask, what brings you to Cleveland Dating Week? I wondered if I was being a bit too forceful. For someone who was a bad investigator, you'd think I was the Inquisition with my line of questions. Nothing's worked so far, so why not take a chance on classic icebreakers and mixers? What about you, number 142? "It's Matty," I winked. "My friends made me sign up. You probably noticed one of them. She's the one wearing the red ball gown." Funny enough, I did see her. I thought she might have got Cleveland Dating Week confused with Comic-Con or junior prom. I let out a giant belly laugh. "I'm definitely circling you down on my notepad. Is that okay with you?" "Sounds good, Matty." Jonah looked down. "Matty is just your nickname, right, 142? The attendant from earlier soon began vaulting into the rules of the speed round tonight. We were going to meet as many people as we could, and hopefully give some kind of indication of who we wanted to meet in the future. The first one up to bat was number 46. "So, what are you looking for?" 46 asked me. "Well, a relationship would be great." "I guess." Number 46 looked dejected, as if I had given him the wrong answer on an exam. "What brings you to Cleveland Dating Week?" I followed up, expecting a volatile answer. "A relationship just feels too ideal. I'd rather just find someone to chill with for right now. Maybe I'll eventually get a relationship." "You do know there are dating apps for that," I mused, writing an X over 46 on my clipboard. Number 103 got way too deep on personal topics like his ex-relationships and dysfunctional family. Number 88 told me that he had to date someone willing to be at my beck and call. I practically tore a hole through the paper on that one. "I think finances are important to me," number 45 stressed. Cross that off. I didn't usually have that much in the finance department. "I like a man who does manly things," number 127 said, with a dreamy look in his eyes. "What are manly things to you?" I questioned, not sure what activities or things he had in mind. To me, as a man, most of the things I did were manly. Like camping in the woods, hunting, cars, and machines. Another cross off on my sheet. I was ready to circle number 20, 65, 91, 135, and 151, but all of them introduced some important bedroom information that made me realize the long haul was not meant for us. After a string of bad luck, number 107 proved to be worthwhile, not because he was amazing, but he was hitting the metrics. I had 2 men circled out of the dozen I had met so far. I took a quick break and got some water at a nearby station. Mariah happened to be there, typing furiously on her phone. How's it going? I found 2 maybes in the whole pile so far. Take a look at my sheet. Mariah held up her clipboard to reveal a messy, ink-scratched, crinkled piece of paper. I'm 2/3 done already. I took her clipboard while Mariah pulled out her phone and typed so quickly that her phone screen was radiating heat from the friction. Not many numbers had been circled, and some of them had been circled with question marks, as if she wasn't sure and she had come back to give a final decision later. Damn, Mariah, it's a mixer, not a marathon. Who are you texting? Family drama, per usual. I wish my family was as happy-go-lucky as yours. She had me there. My family was a smiling pot of positivity that sometimes felt impossibly human. How's Alison doing? I craned my neck to see Alison's colorful, bold presence in a sea of neutral colors and safe clothes. She circled a lot of options. Let's see if the men circle her back. I continued for a while, but it was obvious that I wasn't going to meet everyone. I focused on a couple people who looked to be more in my age range, no offense to the recently legal or recently declared AARP members in the room. I took a picture of my sheet and then turned it in. It was more for reference. As I walked to leave, Jonah approached, turning in his results. I hope I made your list, Jonah said with a charming grin. You did! You made my list of 5 candidates. Oh, turns out you were the picky one. How many did you circle? I tried not sounding so curious. 6. I laughed at that and was glad to know I wasn't the only one having picky issues at Cleveland Dating Week. I hope to see you at the next event, Jonah said, still with his giant smile and a wave. I couldn't help but melt just a little bit. I had a long walk back to my car and couldn't afford to just melt right there in the stadium. Alison was finalizing her tally of dates when I approached her a few minutes later. Number 23 was fine, and as was like 65 and 77, but I loved what 189, 208, and 114 did for a living. And 102 has some big dick energy, I can just tell. Your sheet has more circles than a multiple choice final exam. Do you seriously want to meet all these men? I'm open, Alison purred, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to know how exactly open she was. I dropped Mariah off at her house, and the realization that I was testifying in court tomorrow began to sink in. I could feel my stomach tighten and my nerves clench. Even my watch told me that my BPM mimicked a 600-weight person in the middle of a 30-second run. Shelley Handers, a prosecutor for the city of Cleveland, told me not to worry, but I couldn't help but be a little worried. I got home to find a light in my kitchen, and I almost freaked out. Thankfully, it was my roommate, Jelly. Ramona Jelly Bexley had moved in a few months ago. She was a traveling consultant for a business firm. She was rarely at my house. If anything, she used my house as a fallback from when she wasn't traveling and spending time in hotels or in the company's time. Jelly also has a boyfriend that she had been seeing for the last 2 years. Her boyfriend had his own place, so quite often she was there too. In the last few months, I think I had seen her 10 times? It had been a week or 2 since I had last seen her. Hey. Jelly pulled away from a giant bowl of ice cream. What's new? I just came back from Cleveland Dating Week. Good for you. Any prospects? A few. Cool. Jelly scooped down the rest of the ice cream, rinsed the bowl, and left the kitchen. Night. Jelly was a woman of few words, and I appreciated that. After chasing bounties, looking for diamond rings, talking with singles, and preparing for court testimony, a chatty roommate sounded exhausting. Imagine living with Alison. Worse yet, multiple Alisons. The following morning, I was awake, caffeinated, dressed for success, and ready to be called to the witness stand. Because I was a witness, I had not seen the opening arguments or any of Jeremiah Redwood's trial proceedings. Shelley Handers was the district attorney trying this case. She had a southern accent which appeared something Shelley could turn on and off. She had honey-colored hair, fluffed up like a 70s actress. Shelley also wore very tight, provocative clothes, pandering for the male jurors and the judge. State your name for the record, Judge Pesley asked as I climbed into the witness stand. Matty Iapen. Matty, explain to the courts what happened on that fateful day when you were almost murdered by the defendant. Shelley Handers dramatically shared with the court. With some prompted questions, Shelley Handers had me share my experience, the point where Claudia and Haley knocked him out cold. Thank you for sharing that horrendous story. Shelley turned to the jury with her right hand clutching her heart as if she had eaten a ton of fried chicken under a crispy sun and was experiencing heartburn. Matty, if you feel so inclined, can you explain how you've been since the incident? I eyed Jeremiah Redwood, who was giving me the slightest smirk he could. Well, we do think Redwood is working with people who have yet to be caught, and that's scary. But I do think Redwood has been sending people to try and run me over. 2 cars have now tried to hit me. Redwood looked genuinely taken aback in the moment I dropped the news. My instant gut reaction was that he wasn't behind the car. If he wasn't behind the car, then who was driving by suspiciously? Hit you? With their cars? Shelley's fake southern accent hit a new octave as the jury looked scandalized. Yes. Objection! Redwood's lawyer, a defense attorney by the name of John Justinson Jacobs, roared. We have no evidence that my client was behind that. It's just slander. It's not slander. It's testimony, Shelley barked. Your Honor, this testimony is crucial for establishing Redwood as a murderous, conniving, terrible person. All right, enough with the drama, Judge Pesley muttered. You'd think this was a soap opera right now. Shelley, continue with your witness. Matty, why would Redwood do this? Shelley leaned up against the prosecution's table in the courtroom as if she was merely holding herself up against such terrible news. Well, before he met me, he was part of a drug ring. His partners iced him out. And then when we got involved, I think it's partially because we knew too much. But I think it's also because he liked killing. He liked being murderous. The courtroom devolved into quiet murmuring, which Judge Pesley gavel-slammed into silence. Thank you, Matty. That concludes the questions I have. Shelley turned to John Justinson Jacobs as if he had punched her grandmother in the breast. Matty Iapen. John Justinson Jacobs clicked his tongue as he pronounced my name to the courtroom, as if he were reading off a list of convicted perverts. Is it true that you work full-time as a bounty hunter and an investigator? Yes, I nodded. And do you think you're good at it? Truthfully, I didn't think so, and I worried that it might count as perjury if I lied, but Shelley was eyeing me down with headlight pupils that said, that's a yes. Yes. I'd like to enter some footage to the contrary. John Justinson Jacobs had his assistant roll out a giant plasma screen. Clearly this got you moment had been prepared ahead of time. Matty, do you remember this incident? The assistant turned on the plasma TV, which was hooked up to a laptop with an HDMI. The entire courtroom seemed to lean closer, excited to see what footage was about to be shared. The video showcased a man running through a library conference room filled with old ladies. There were some screams, my arrival, gunshots from the perpetrator which eventually stopped, and then I tackled the assailant to the ground out of adrenaline. On the screen, you could see the pissed-off, elderly, and surprisingly high-definition face of Mrs. Dorriander. It was pretty impressive that the Cleveland Public Library had access to 4K security camera footage. I know that Jeremiah Redwood, littering, and not a gun battle at a library. This was a terrible skip who I had chased into the library. He ended up firing his gun in the conference room before I was able to apprehend him. Sounds like you're not good at your job. John Justinson Jacobs let out a sigh that could only be described as a foghorn. Oh, I don't really trust this witness. Your Honor, I'd like to call up a supplementary witness to give us more explanation of this footage. They're actually the person who submitted the footage to me and the court. The room blossomed with gasps over the demand for the supplementary witness. I already had a good guess on who submitted this footage, but a giant oh no washed over my whole body as I saw Mrs. Dorriander enter the courtroom with a bailiff. Moments later, I had been excused from the witness stand, and Mrs. Dorriander had sat down in the witness box. She had curled her dry hair, her fingers were painted purple, and her smirk was so deep and long that she looked like Jared Leto's version of the Joker. Mrs. Dorriander, can you explain this footage I showed the court? I sure can. I was running a meeting of the Scarlet Hat Society when a criminal ran into the room. There was chaos, as you can see from the footage, and then Matty Iapen, the man over there. She held up a firm ancient finger in my direction. He entered the room. There were bullets everywhere. I think Matty was the one to shoot first. That was a lie. Even the footage showed that I had reacted in self-defense, and nobody was injured or killed. But John Justinson Jacobs was not going to turn down free ammo. So are you telling this court that Matty is a potentially dangerous man whose testimony should not be trusted in this court? Of course, Mrs. Dorriander said. He barely passed 3rd grade. The jury looked like pigeons who had been fed upscale bread. That's not even true. She hated me as a child, I stage whispered to Shelley Handers, but even Shelley looked intrigued by the surprised witness. Don't worry, I'll handle her in cross-examination. Shelley was sweating. Her brow was covered in pinpricks of nervous sweat. Even though I hated her guts, Mrs. Dorriander made a fantastic witness. Now, Mrs. Dorriander, is it true that you think Redwood might be innocent? I trust that lovely gentleman and police officer more than I trust Matty Iapen, and you can put that on record. There was no choice in this room to leave something off the record. John Justinson Jacobs looked like a shark that had got the big flounder. So in your expert field, you think there's no way we can trust the words out of Matty Iapen? What was Mrs. Dorriander an expert in? Being gossipy? Being nosy? Hating me for no apparent reason ever since I was a child? We certainly can't trust him or his testimony. Interesting. Thank you for being brave and sharing this testimony. Mrs. Dorriander was glowing more than a lighthouse. Shelley, it's your witness. John Justinson Jacobs returned to the table and gave a high five to Redwood, who was smiling. I could feel steam coming out of my ears, like I was a bag of cheap frozen vegetables overcooked in a microwave. Shelley stood up, looking like a small girl who was attempting to cross the street. Mrs. Dorriander, you seem very smart. I cringed. Oh, dear God. Shelley was already messing this up. But perhaps you have some bias against Matty Iapen. Based on the footage, it seems like it was an unfortunate event that was outside of Matty's control. That implies Matty has control, which I don't think he does. But you think Matty Iapen is so stupid, inept, and incapable that his personal experience about Redwood might be twisted or wrong? I wouldn't trust Matty Iapen to take out the trash. The jury loved that line. A few of them laughed out loud and covered their mouths with clapped hands. Well, Shelley paused. I just disagree with you. Matty is an upstanding person of character. He's a leader of the community. I frowned. I wouldn't say I'm a bad person, but upstanding character and community leader were not on my resume. If Matty Iapen is leading this community, then no wonder Cleveland is going to shit. Mrs. Dorriander sounded like a worked-up preacher who caught his daughter kissing a local boy. Shelley saw that she was losing the crowd and quickly ended the interrogation. That was a shit show, I mumbled to Shelley, trying not to move my lips like I was a puppeteer. I know this is my fault. Shelley had dropped her accent following the sticky debacle. I was taken aback by Shelley's honesty. She had really botched up the grilling of Mrs. Dorriander. Shelley gave me a frown. I should have dug into your past a bit more. I didn't realize you were this shitty. Oh, I couldn't fault her for thinking that. After court got out, I drove back to the office with an angry look on my face. I walked in to see Kathy at reception, still looking like a patient in a medical drama. Feeling better? I asked. No, but I'm trying some new drugs today, and I'm hoping they help with the pain. New prescription from your doctor? No, from my neighbor's son. I didn't want to question that any further. Alison came up to the desk and grabbed one of Kathy's hard pieces of candy, which had probably been in the bowl since it was originally stocked. Oh, you're back, Alison sounded while making obnoxious sucking sounds on the candy. She sounded like a piranha on a piece of meat or a lamprey on skin. I arrived back at the annex to find Mariah fiddling away at her desk. Alison followed, still enjoying her lemon drop treat. Court was a mess, I said as I strolled in. Are you serious? Mariah questioned. I have to testify tomorrow. Well, get ready to be grilled. Mrs. Dorriander testified against me. They pulled out a character witness on your character? What on earth does that have to do with Redwood's crimes? Nothing, which I think is the point. The defense is going to paint our testimony as shit and hope that the hard science is too much for the jury. We do live in Ohio, Alison reminded us. It's likely the jurors do overlook the hard science. I hope not. If Redwood is on the streets, our lives are in jeopardy. We have another dating event tonight, Alison reminded me. What if we find love, and then we're killed because of Redwood being released? That would suck. It wouldn't suck because I'd be dead and unwilling to say it sucked. With the rest of the afternoon open, we decided to look into Maxamillion Ladorva. We had pulled up down the street from the Ladorva estate and cut through the side. We passed some expensive garden ornaments and the evil ducks. This time, Maxamillion was home in his downstairs living room. Maxamillion Ladorva had black jet hair, which was gelled backwards and tight on his scalp. He had a silk robe on and fluffy slippers. He was reading the New York Times and had a glass of Chardonnay or something bubbly on the table next to him. He was sitting on a leather sofa and looked quite pleased with his relaxation techniques. "Who enjoys reading the newspaper like that?" Alison looked like she had seen something foul. "Maybe he's a sociopath." "He's open to the economics section, the worst section of the newspaper. So boring." "Maxamillion looks rich, but he doesn't look suspicious at the moment," Alison chirped. "Wait a minute." Mariah looked fixated, her eyes focusing in like a camera lens. Alison and I turned to face Mariah, a touch confused. But instead of speaking, Mariah pointed right at something through the window, and I followed where her finger was pointing at. Once my eyes connected with where she was pointing, I gasped. "I didn't see it," I shockingly stated, as if I was in a dramatic community play. Mariah agreed. "Yes, neither did I at first." On Maxamillion's middle finger was a giant diamond ring that looked exactly like the drawing Vegas had provided us.